Hi everyone, I'm Todd Sepulveda, the editor of Prepper Website and the host of the Prepper Website podcast. And this is my favorite article of the week. I try to do that every Thursday, try to go live. And I just want to shout out to everyone who's joining me right now and just appreciate all you guys who are here and hanging out. And definitely, even if you come in late, you know, or you have to step out, you know that this is going to stay on the Facebook page, and so you can always go check it out a little bit later on. And so what I do is on the favorite article of the week is I go back to the podcast and the podcast episodes from last week, and I look at all the articles that I read. Now, all the articles come from Prepper Website. They're all really great, and I really sift through the articles that I read on the podcast and try to pick out really, really great ones. But then even at that, I've got some favorites. And this last week was really hard because there was 3 or 4 there that I wanted to really kind of choose and pick from. But I finally kind of narrowed it down to this one article from askaprepper.com. And so let me go ahead and show that to you really quickly there. It's askaprepper.com. They have some really great articles that they put out over there. And this article is entitled 10 EMP Proof Items to Hoard. Now, here's the thing. I'm not reading this one from the standpoint of this article. So the 10 EMP proof items to hoard. I really don't think that was, sometimes we put, when we write articles and stuff like that, in websites, they will put things in there to kind of get people to come and read them. And I know that anytime an EMP or a bug out bag, those types of things are talked about, then that article is going to get a lot of hits, right? But I'm really reading this article because what I do is I don't read the article like I do on the podcast. I kind of look at it and jump off of that article and talk a little bit about it. So I think that there were some great items in here that for preppers, that they're items that we should be stockpiling, items that we should be looking at. And there's one in here that I completely do not agree with, and so I kind of want to point that one out. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. If you have any comments for me, any questions, go ahead and put them into put them in Facebook, and I will in the comment section, and I'll check them out. But let's go ahead and go to our first item that Ask a Prepper says that we should stockpile, and the first one is lighters. So I remember listening to I remember reading an article by Selko who talked about how lighters were so beneficial. And Selko, he writes from the perspective of being a survivor from the Bosnian War. He was in Sarajevo when it was surrounded, and so he lived like that for about a year. And one of the things he talked about is the way that he bartered and the way that he got through was he found a way to rig up a propane tank and fill up lighter bottles or lighters again, and was able to exchange that out for barter and for things that he really needed. And so, I think when we talk about, a lot of times in the preparedness community, we talk about ferro rods and we talk about all these other ways of making fire. And I think all those things are very, very important. And I think that if you are preparedness minded and maybe you have a get home bag, maybe you have a bug out bag, I believe you should have a fire kit. I think a fire kit is important to have, and it's not very hard to make. I did an article over at Ed That Matters just recently on a DIY Altoids fire kit. Actually, I thought I might have had it right here, but no, I went ahead and put it up. And so a DIY fire kit, Altoids fire kit, and so they're really easy to make, and you can check that article out. But I think everyone should have means to do that, and one of the easiest ways is lighters. There is a little bit of a learning curve with ferro rods. There is a little bit of a learning curve when even the bow drill. I mean, you need to really, really know what you're doing to do the bow drill and try to get fire that way. And there are people out there who know what they're doing and can do that very, very easily. But lighters, I do believe that is one of the things that if we're making fire, that we really should be, that we really should stockpile. And if you're going to stockpile, lighters, and again, I'm not really thinking about EMP, and maybe sometimes people talk about bartering and maybe you're going to stockpile items for barter. I know some people don't believe that that's what you should do. I don't believe that you should go into that being your focus, right? But if you ever think that, hey, I want to make fire, I want to make it easily, I don't want to have this big old learning curve, I'm going to stockpile lighters, right? And so you want to go with the good ones. I bought the cheap lighters before, and they will not last. So make sure you get the good Bic lighters. And, you might even, if you put them in your fire kit, you might even want to waterproof them in a baggie somehow. I have seen in one of those, if you are in the Facebook, in the Prepper website email list, I send out links to hacks every once in a while. And one of the hacks that I recently saw was putting a balloon on over a lighter to kind of make it fireproof, and that way it wouldn't, if it got into the water, it wouldn't damage it or whatever. So if you are into wanting to practice using a ferro rod, they sell ferro rods that are really small, and those are really a pain in the butt, because you have a little bit of the ferro rod. I recently did an article on the survival hacks ferro rod, and it's a 6-inch ferro rod, and I should have it here with me so I could show it to you online. But it's a 6-inch ferro rod, and it's feels really great in your hand. It comes with paracord and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, they gave me a coupon code to share out. And if you go to Amazon, it's $19.99, but if with a coupon code, you can get it for $9.99. And that is a great deal if you go and compare some of the other ferro rods on Amazon, because you get the 5 feet of paracord, you get the striker, and you get a little waterproof container where you can put some tinder in there. But anyway, I have that link in the show notes or whatever in the video description there on Facebook. And so if you're interested in doing that, great little ferro rod there for you. All right, so let's go ahead and see what else we have here at Ask a Prepper. He talks about cash, right? One of the things that you should be stockpiling is cash. And some people are going to have different opinions about that. It might be dangerous. Some people might feel like it's dangerous to have a whole lot of money at home, and you definitely don't want to announce it out there that you have a stockpile of money out there. And because if your house burns down or something happens to it, you lose all that. The thing is that if you're going to stockpile money, right? And I think everyone should have cash on hand. I think everybody should have an emergency fund. That's something that we talk about on a regular basis. Buy a firebox. Go to Walmart and buy a firebox that's rated at a decent, so if your house does go up in flames, for whatever reason, and we pray that doesn't happen, but you can hide this firebox somewhere in your home and know that it's going to go ahead and it's not going to burn up all your money or whatever. But I do believe that you should have cash on hand, and not necessarily to barter, not necessarily to waiting for the EMP or anything like that, but I think it's just smart to have cash for whenever you need it, and I think that's an important thing to have. So let's go ahead and see what else he has over here. Bullets. All right, I'm going to do a twofer, right? I'm going to do bullets and tools right here, and we'll kind of keep it there. All right, bullets. Definitely stockpiling bullets. I think that's important. And here's the thing about bullets. I remember listening to a couple of guys that I linked to on Prepper website that do firearms and stuff like that. Where we are right now with ammunition and guns, hasn't been a lot of talk about gun confiscation and all that kind of stuff, which is good, because if you were in the preparedness community or if you were in firearms last time that really hit, everything flew off the shelf. You couldn't find 22s shells, you couldn't find 9mm, you could find some rare stuff and the real expensive stuff, but it really flew off the shelves. And so we really haven't had anything, even with the Las Vegas thing that happened at the Mandalay Hotel, when they were talking about the bump stocks and all that kind of stuff, we still didn't see, I was expecting to see ammo and shortages and all that, and with the politicians ramping up and talking about, gun control and all that kind of stuff. We didn't really hear it. But here's the deal. You're never going to pay less for any ammo and any firearms than you will right now. All right. I think that if you purchase them now, I think they're just going to get more expensive as it goes. Definitely, if there is a shortage, there's always going to be people selling them at high prices and spiking the price and all that kind of stuff. But if you're just going to your regular, big box store, or you're going to your sporting goods store right now, I think that they're never going to be cheaper than right now, because just the things are always getting more expensive. So one of the numbers that you always hear is about 1,000 rounds. Having 1,000 rounds is good for whatever you might, whatever firearm you might have. You got to decide that on your own. There's a lot of that right there on a forum will just kind of, it's one of those things like talking about 9mm or 45. That can go on and on and on, and talking about that. But I think that having some ammo, I think that is a good idea to kind of stockpile. All right, so I'm going to look really quick on Facebook, look at the comments, see if I have anything here. All right, no specific questions. All right, so let's keep going. We said tools. Okay, so I'm sorry. So tools. I think tools are very important, and it goes along with the bullet thing as well, or with the ammo thing. I think that having tools, you can only appreciate in value if you're buying good quality tools. Now, you can go to places like Harbor Freight, and you'll overhear people talk about Harbor Freight and say they're like a one-time use tool. It's like, hey, especially if it's something like like a plugging into the electricity or something, you use it one time and then you know that you're never going to use it again, or if you get a second use out of it, good for you. Buying hammers and things like that, I mean, that might be a different case, but even at that, it's still what you really want to do is focus on good quality tools that are going to last. And one of the things that I like to do, because I know that it's having tools is always going to be one of those things that's always beneficial. It's always going to be helpful to have tools. But one of the things that I like to focus on as well, not only buying tools and making sure that I have tools that I can do things that I need to do, but also trying to find ways to do things that normally I would use, like a power drill. I have purchased drills, like mechanical drills, or handheld drills from Amazon and different places. There were good quality drills, but you didn't need power, is what I'm trying to say. And so I think tools are always going to be one of those things. Another thing that goes along with tools is if you can find like nails and nuts and bolts and those kinds of things. I mean, you can always have a jar where you're always throwing that stuff in. You never know when you're going to need one of those things. But if you can find, like you go to a garage sale and someone has a big stack of nuts and bolts, you might want to buy that. If you go to a pawn shop and they have a bunch of nuts and bolts and like, hey, how much for that, that all those nuts and bolts or whatever, I think those are something that you might want to have as well, because you just, you never know when you're going to need that. And I think that's great. All right, so let's see what else Ask a Prepper has for us over here. All right, so this is the thing that I wanted to talk about that is just completely wrong. Cooking oil, right? Cooking oil, they talked about stockpiling cooking oil. And here's the thing, cooking oil goes rancid. And so if you stockpile cooking oil, you can always use it, right? If you're going to use it, you can use it to, make lanterns or whatever. You can use it in that capacity. But if you're using it for cooking, it's going to go rancid. And somewhere between a year, maybe 2 years, maybe even less, depending on the quality of the cooking oil, you might want to be very, very careful. So it's not one of those things where you're stockpiling. And definitely not one of those things where you have a bunch of cases of it, right? Unless you know in your mind already that you're going to be using those. You have some kind of diesel machinery. You can turn that into some kind of fuel, or you can burn lanterns or whatever. But if you're planning on using that for cooking, you're going to run into a problem if you're not using it. And I don't know people who use that much cooking oil. Well, I mean, you got to be careful out there, just health wise. But I don't know someone who's using so many or so much of cooking oil that you're able to have cases of it, or big bottles of it, and you're turning that over on a regular basis. So be careful with that. Cooking oil might be important. You might use it on a regular basis, but you definitely want to really look into that. All that kind of has a shelf life, not like canned foods and things like that. All right, moving right along. Books. I think books, stockpiling books is one of those great things there. Recently someone had said, and I don't know if maybe it was on the Facebook group. If you're not a member of that group, I welcome you to come over there. But they went to a resale shop, and they found some really great books, and they were dropping off, and maybe it wasn't even the Prepper website Facebook group. I don't know, but I was reading it, and they go into this resale shop to throw away or throw out some things, give them some things that they're not using anymore, and then they run by the book section and they buy all these books. And here's the thing: sometimes, if people have been prepping, right, and some of you know that I'm a minister, so this happens from the ministry side as well. People who, let's just say you have an older person and they pass away, and their family comes and they're not wanting to sell all they're just wanting to get the stuff and donate, or maybe they're wanting to just kind of hurry up and part with some of their things. And so let's just say they have this big library, and they take it over to the Salvation Army, or they take it over to to a resale shop. A lot of people looking at preparedness books, survival books, they might not, okay, whatever that is, right? But for those of us who are preparedness minded, we would hit the jackpot if someone was doing that. Or for me, like if there was an old minister maybe, or someone who was very involved in their church, and then they passed away and their family didn't care about their books, and they just put them, sent them to Goodwill or whatever, and then all those would wind up on the shelf, and you'd get those for very, very good prices. So if you go into a resale shop, and a lot of people do, you can go in there and check out the books. Half Price Books is another place. I always visit Half Price Books and find great deals all the time. And one of the things you might want to do is write down some of the in one of your apps or whatever. Write down some of the books that you're looking for, some of the authors that you trust, and then when you go, you have a list that you can go from there. So I think stockpiling books is always great, especially when it comes to preparedness. There's some books there that you should have. Anything on first aid, anything on survival, wilderness survival, anything on old primitive skills and things like that. If you can find those, great. I have found some Foxfire books at Half Price Books, and great deal over there. So definitely go check that out, and you might hit the jackpot. You never know. All right, moving on. Books, and then water in many ways. I totally agree with this, that one of the things that we should have plenty of is ways to purify and filter water. That is the big deal. That is one of the most important things. And so, I like to have multiple ways to do that. Some people have, one, they focus on one way, but I think that having multiple ways is good. And so you have the tabs, you have filters, you have, all those, and then you have the knowledge to be able to do it. Even if you didn't have that, what could you filter water with what you have? Do you know how long to boil? All those kinds of things. And so having multiple ways for water, I think to be able to purify and filter water is very, very important. The next thing that they talk about is medicine, right? Medicine, and we're going to also take this next one as well, medicine and first aid. Right now, can you imagine right now, if you get sick and you need something, right? So flu is crazy right now, and people are sick and cold or whatever, and you can go to the pharmacy and you can get anything you want. I mean, there's aisles and aisles and aisles of medicine that you could get, cough drops and NyQuil and whatever you possibly could want. And can you imagine being sick and not being able to have that? And so, what kinds of medicines do you use on a regular basis, or not even on a regular basis, but what kind of medicines do you normally use that you can stockpile? And maybe just like we do our food stocking, we do the first in, first out with our food rotation, you would rotate out medicine. And I think that would be one of the things that you'd want to consider. Medicine, just like food, does not expire. There is not something, if you have some Advil and then if it whatever expires at the end of the month, there's not some little monster that goes in there and destroys it all. The only thing that what happens to medicine is it loses its potency the older that it gets. So you might need to take more to be able to get the effect that you need, but that's one of the positive things about storing medicine. And so, think about what you would normally use. The only other medicine, the medicine that I would not stockpile, is anything liquid. That's just my preference. I don't think that would last as long as anything that's in a pill form. But what kinds of things do you use? What kind of things does your family use on a regular basis that you can stockpile and use? And the other thing there that was in the article was first aid supplies. One of the things I remember listening to Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy talk about, and specifically Nurse Amy, I know that she was talking about this, is that you think you have a lot of first aid supplies, and you might have a tote, you might have a closet, a shelf on your closet or whatever, but one big situation can eat up a whole lot of supplies. And right now we can go to the pharmacy, you can buy things, you can go to Walmart, you can go wherever, and you can buy first aid supplies. But when when you can't buy them anymore, you're going to wish you had those. So one of the ideas, and I know that Erica from Living Life in Rural Iowa talked about that when she was on live with me a couple of weeks back. Talked about going and stocking up slowly on first aid supplies. And one of the places that you can do that is at the dollar store. You can go to the dollar store and stock up little by little on first aid supplies and just kind of put them away. And maybe you have a tote and you put them in a tote and you separate them out, bandages and Band-Aids and gauze or however you want to do it. If you have the money to be able to do it, you can purchase a lot off of Amazon. Sometimes you hit the really great deals, and you can bring in some great things. And so anyway, those are things that I think that everyone should stockpile and would be worth it. Then let's go ahead and talk about trash bags. My favorite trash bag are the contractor's bag or the 55-gallon bags. I think those are so useful for so many different things, right? You can put one of those, and actually I have one in each of our bug out bags. And so it's in there, and you can use that as a rain poncho. You can use it for if you want to cover something. You can use it as a ground blanket. You can use it, because there's 55 gallon. The suckers are big and they're really wide as well. You can use it if you wanted to string a couple up as a shelter. So there's many uses for it. I think it'd be great to have some of those. You can buy them, and they're very thick as well. That's one of the things that I like about them. The mil, you can find them in the 6 and 8 mil, I believe. Plastic, and they're really thick and they're really nice. And so I think that's one of the ones that you should have. A lot of people store the smaller ones to use, like if they ever need for hygiene purposes, if they ever need to go to the restroom and be able to use the restroom and then tie it up and use those. They stockpile those. I just like the contractor bags. I think you can just do so much with that. And so one of the things that that's my recommendation to stockpile. Now, at the end of this article here, he talks a little bit about ways that you can stockpile, right? So there's the supermarket hoard, the bulk purchase, and the discount explorer. The supermarket hoard is basically that you go in, you're able to do a little bit at a time. Sorry, pushing the wrong buttons here. You're able to do a little bit at a time. You purchase a little bit of first aid supplies. You purchase, one trip to the store, you buy this. One trip to the store, you buy this. Whatever. And so you have it that way. And then you have a little bit more of the bulk purchases, where you're able to go maybe to like a Sam's or a Costco, and you're able to buy a little bit more that way if you can afford it. And then you have the big discount explorer type thing that he was talking about, and that's where you go in with a lot of people, and you're able to buy a lot of stuff because you can get it at great discounts because there's so many people together pulling their money. And so I don't know, I never really talked to anyone who has ever done that before. I have only read about that in books. And I have read that in articles, but I've never known anyone who has gotten together with a whole bunch of people and have purchased a bunch of preparedness items like that. I know people that have done that here in my area of town. We have, livestock shows and stuff like that. I know people that have gone in to purchase like a steer or for butchering and stuff like that, but not preparedness items like, whatever. The last thing that I would say that I think is be very important for me, and I don't think a lot of people realize how important this is until you don't have it. But toilet paper. Oh my gosh! Have you ever been like you've got kids and you probably know how this feels, is you go to sit down and you realize you don't have any toilet paper. So then you're calling people to bring you toilet paper. Can you imagine if you didn't have any toilet paper, what would you do? And that's just not a thought that I want to go to. That's just not a place that I want to be at. And so, one of the things that I care about and that I want to make sure that I have toilet paper, man. That's one of the things that I want to stockpile. But anyway, that's it. That's a lot of good stuff over there at askaprepper.com. Go check it out. They have a big community over there, so they have 55 comments. People just dropping a lot of information there. When there's 55 comments, I know that there's a lot of other great stuff there. Hey, Prepper website. And then go vote for them as well at Top Prepper sites. All right. So I'm playing around now. But anyway, a lot of good stuff over at askaprepper.com. Hey guys, and don't forget that if you want that ferro rod, that is a great deal. Like I said, I purchased a couple myself when I realized how great the price was. I purchased some so that I could give away as gifts and things like that. So you can go check that out. That's in the link, in the description there. And hey, I appreciate you hanging out with me. I appreciate you, listening to the podcast and come over to Prepper website and be looking for this next week as well as we do another favorite article of the week. I really enjoy doing this with you. All right, guys, thanks so much.